Good evening. And welcome to another soft and peaceful sleepy history story. Tonight, we gently wander into one of the quietest and most whispered legends in the American South. A place where time moves slowly, and old stories drift like moss in the warm Louisiana air, as you settle in. Allow your breathing to soften, let the day grow distant, and let your mind drift toward a calm, restful place. We're going to explore the gentle, lingering folklore of the Myrtles Plantation, a home wrapped in oak trees, still verandas, and mysteries passed down in soft voices for generations. Nothing here is meant to startle, everything is meant to soothe, a simple journey through quiet history as you drift toward sleep. So, whenever you're ready, let's begin our story. Tonight, the Haunted Myrtles Plantation. The story begins in the quiet heart of Louisiana's countryside, a place where the air is warm, the evenings move gently, and ancient oak trees stretch their branches like calm guardians over the land, long before the legends formed. Long before visitors spoke in hushed tones about strange sights or soft footsteps, the area was simply a peaceful stretch of southern earth. Fields rolled slowly toward the horizon, and the breeze carried the scent of pine, earth, and river water. In the late 18th century, people came here searching for a place to plant roots, a place to build a home, raise families, and find a bit of stability in a young and growing America. Life unfolded at an unhurried pace. Workers tended to crops beneath the shade of the great oaks, children played in the dusty paths, and the wide wooden porches of the early plantation homes offered quiet shelter from the sun. Nothing felt rushed, every sound, from a distant wagon wheel to a chirping bird, seemed to echo softly across the open fields. It was in this gentle, slow-moving world that the property now known as the Myrtles Plantation began its story. Not with fear or mystery, but with the simple, everyday rhythm of early southern life. Families built sturdy walls, hung lanterns on warm evenings, and carved out a living in the calm stillness of the Louisiana landscape. No one then could have imagined that decades later, whispers, stories, and lingering legends would settle over the home like a thin, delicate mist. But for now, in these early moments, the Myrtles Plantation was just a quiet place on quiet land, beginning its long journey through American history. The story begins in the soft, humid embrace of the Louisiana countryside, where the late evening sun drifts low across the treetops and spills warm, golden light over the earth. The land here carries a deep stillness, a kind of slow, patient quiet that settles gently into the air. If you stood along the old dirt road that once led toward the future grounds of the Myrtles Plantation, you would feel the warmth radiating up from the soil, hear the faint hum of insects drifting lazily between the trees, and maybe sense the soft rustle of moss as it sways under long branches overhead. This was a place where time seemed to move at a different speed. Calmer, quieter. Almost as if the land itself wanted life to unfold gently. Long before the world called it haunted, before stories were whispered in the shadows of porches or exchanged by visitors passing through, the area was simply an open stretch of early American frontier, a mixture of thick forests, rolling farmland, and the wide-reaching sky that stretched endlessly overhead. Families moving into the region came seeking stability, land to cultivate, and a fresh start in a young and growing country. They traveled by wagon, horseback, or small riverboats along nearby waterways, bringing with them tools, hopes, and the slow, steady determination it took to build a new life. When the earliest settlers walked this land, the earth was still wild and richly green. Dew collected on the tall grass in the mornings. Birds settled along the branches in calm little clusters. And the nights carried a hush so complete that even a soft breeze could feel like a small event. In these early years, the plantation that would eventually become known as the Myrtles was just an idea, a possibility, resting quietly beneath the soil and deep within the minds of those who first imagined a home here. They saw a future filled with porch rails, lantern lights, and long rows of crops stretching across the gentle curve of the land. Life for them was slow, built with patient hands and simple ambitions. People cleared fields, one careful step at a time. Marking boundaries, building fences, and shaping the land into something familiar, something steady. Timber homes were constructed with thick wooden beams cut from nearby forests. A single home would begin as a modest shelter, and over time, more rooms would be added, more posts raised, until the structure grew sturdy and recognizable under the shade of the old oaks. Even in these days, those great trees were here, draped in Spanish moss that hung like soft, silver threads. The oaks seemed ancient, as if they had been standing long before any human set down roots. They stretched outward with calm, steady confidence, offering shade from the sun and a sense of protection from summer storms, for the families who lived on this land. Days were filled with small, predictable tasks. A morning might begin with the sound of roosters in the distance, followed by the creak of wooden steps as someone stepped out onto the porch. Workers moved through the fields, tending to newly planted crops. Others carried water, built fences, or prepared meals over warm cooking fires. Children found amusement in simple things, a line of ants moving across a fallen log, the splash of a stone thrown into a creek, or the thrill of climbing low branches under the oak canopy. In the evenings, families gathered along porches or beside small lanterns, sharing stories in voices that gradually softened as night fell. There was something about those nights. Long, warm, and gentle. Fireflies sparkled like drifting embers above the grass, and the moon cast quiet silver light across the fields. Even back then, before any whispers of mystery touched the plantation's name, some people would pause during these calm evenings and sense something subtle in the air, not unpleasant, not frightening, just attentive. As if the land listened. As if it remembered. That feeling grew over generations, though no one could say precisely why. It might have been the way the wind moved through the trees or the faint echo of distant river sounds drifting through the quiet. But every now and then, someone working late in the field or walking home at dusk felt a small, unexplainable pull, a sense that the land was aware of them, the way one might feel a gentle gaze resting softly on their back. Still, life continued peacefully. The plantation home, once finished, stood tall and graceful beneath the oak branches. It was crafted with wooden planks that shone warmly under the afternoon sun, and its wraparound porch invited residents and guests alike to rest in the shade. Soft curtains hung in the windows, swaying slightly when the breeze drifted through. Inside, the rooms were quiet but full of life. Floors creaked gently beneath footsteps. The smell of wood, cotton, and freshly cooked meals lingered in the air. And lanterns cast warm pools of light that danced softly along the walls. Everything here was simple. Unhurried. Rooted in the gentle rhythm of early Southern living. As the years passed, more families came and went. Each added something to the land, a new room, a new tree planted near the porch, a new story spoken during an evening gathering. The plantation flourished in its own quiet way. Travelers occasionally passed through, sometimes staying overnight, describing the home as peaceful, still, and deeply connected to the landscape around it. Yet, even in these calm early days, subtle hints of mystery wove themselves into the fabric of the place. A worker might mention hearing footsteps along an empty hallway late at night. Soft ones, almost too light to notice. A visiting guest might comment on a sense of being watched while walking under the oaks, not in a threatening way, but as though the trees held memories they wished to share. And sometimes, on warm evenings when the air felt thick and still, the house's shutters would move ever so slightly, even when no wind seemed present. People would smile, shrug off these small moments, and continue with their routines. But the experiences lingered. They became part of the quiet conversations shared during late suppers, passed from one generation to the next, until eventually, those tiny hints of the unknown formed the earliest roots of what would someday grow into the legend of a haunted plantation. Still, in these soft early years, the land remained mostly peaceful. No one spoke the word haunted yet. No one framed the stories in the language of fear. Instead, they described them gently, almost affectionately, the way one might describe an old friend with a few odd quirks. The plantation, even then, seemed to be a place where history collected like morning dew, softly, quietly, gradually. Each new arrival, each family, each whispered tale added a thin layer to the atmosphere, deepening the sense that this was more than just a home. It was a living presence, shaped by time, memory, and the hundreds of footsteps that crossed its floors. As dusk settled each evening, long shadows stretched across the porch boards. The wooden columns glowed faintly in the fading sunlight. People returning indoors would glance across the yard, watching the fireflies drift through the low grass, and feel a strange comfort in the landscape's ancient, unchanging calm, and in the stillness of those nights, as the crickets sang and the moon climbed steadily higher, something quiet stirred beneath the surface. Not a haunting, not yet. But a gentle whisper of what the land had witnessed, what it held, and what it might one day reveal. Years would pass before any of the well-known stories began. Decades, even, before names, faces, and tragedies became woven into the plantation's identity. For now, in this early part of the story, everything remained soft and untouched by the weight of legend. The home stood quietly under the oaks. Lantern light flickered behind its windows. The air smelled of earth, wood, and warm southern breezes. And the land waited, patient, observant, collecting every moment that would someday become part of its long, whispering history. As this chapter ends, the plantation rests in calm stillness, unaware of the tales the future will bring. And you, the listener, may feel the gentle pull of curiosity. A soft wondering about what comes next, because the story of the Myrtles Plantation, like the land itself, unfolds slowly. Layer by layer. Memory by memory. The story continues with a small shift. A gentle turn in the atmosphere of the Myrtles Plantation. Not a sharp change, not a sudden moment, but something quieter, the kind of subtle transformation that creeps into a place slowly, settling in the corners, gathering in memories, waiting to be noticed. As the early years passed, the plantation grew more defined. Its long porches had grown sturdier. Its rooms more familiar. And by the early 1800s, a new family arrived who would shape the identity of the land in ways none of them could have predicted. The family was drawn here by the promise of fertile ground, steady harvests, and the calm rhythm of southern living. They brought trunks filled with clothing, journals, small keepsakes from their former home, and dreams of a comfortable future. When they stepped out of the wagon and onto the soft earth of the plantation grounds, the air greeted them warmly. The oaks stood tall around them, creating a natural archway that seemed to welcome their arrival. The home itself felt steady and inviting. Sunlight streamed through the windows in long, gentle lines that illuminated the wooden floors. Dust motes drifted lazily in the air, swirling softly as if moved by invisible hands. Everything about the house seemed peaceful, but also attentive. As if it listened. As if it remembered the footsteps of everyone who came before. The new family brought life to the house, slow breakfasts taken on the porch. Laughter in the late afternoons, small celebrations, and quiet evenings spent reading by lantern glow. The plantation workers continued their daily routines, caring for crops and tending to the land with practiced ease, but little by little, the new residents began to notice small, almost imperceptible moments that felt different from anything they had known before. It might begin with something as simple as a door that clicked softly open, even though no one was near it, or the slight sensation of movement down an empty hallway. A shift in air. A quiet suggestion that someone had just passed by. No one spoke of it at first. Not directly. They mentioned it casually, brushing it off in gentle, easy tones. Must have been the wind, someone would say. Old houses do that, another would add. And indeed, old houses do make sounds. Wood settles. Beams creak. But at the Myrtles Plantation, these moments carried something different, not alarming, but strangely purposeful. As though the house acted with a soft intention all its own. One of the daughters in the family, a quiet young girl with a calm spirit, noticed it more than anyone. She would sit for hours on the porch, watching the moss sway under the branches. Sometimes, she told her mother she felt as though someone was standing just behind her. Not close, not threatening. Just quietly present, like a companion she couldn't quite see. Her mother would smile gently and stroke her hair. This land has a long memory, she would say. Old places hold on to the past. The little girl found comfort in that thought. She never felt afraid. Instead, she felt a strange, peaceful connection to the plantation, as if she were gently held within the rhythm of its history. But as weeks turned into months, more small moments began to gather. The father of the household sometimes heard faint footsteps crossing the hallway long after everyone had gone to bed. The sound was light, steady, almost the way a child might walk if they were trying not to wake anyone. He would step out of bed, lantern in hand, and check the halls. Each time, they were empty. Completely still. The floorboards, quiet moments earlier, now creaked under his weight, adding to the soft mystery of the house. He told no one at first, not wanting to trouble his family. But he made a habit of checking the windows, making sure no animals had wandered inside. Checking the locks. Making sure every room was secure. The house always remained unchanged, calm, and undisturbed. One evening, while sitting near the front of the house, the mother noticed a gentle swaying of the chandelier above the dining table. There was no breeze, no open window, no movement in the room. Just a delicate, slow rocking. Almost like a cradle being lulled softly to sleep. She watched it quietly, her breath slow, her hands still. The room felt peaceful, warm, and familiar, yet she could not ignore the sensation that someone unseen had just passed beneath it. Still, she said nothing. Life carried on quietly, and the plantation moved gently along its steady course. It wasn't until a visitor arrived, a relative passing through, that someone finally said the words out loud. The visitor spent a night in one of the guest rooms. A quiet room with soft curtains and a view of the oak branches outside. In the morning, over coffee, he mentioned hearing what sounded like humming in the night. A soft, low tune. Almost like a lullaby. He assumed someone in the family had been unable to sleep and was wandering the halls. But when he mentioned it, the family exchanged calm, puzzled glances. "We were all asleep," the father said gently. "No one was up last night," the mother added. The visitor paused, stirring his coffee slowly. "Ah," he said with a soft smile. "It must have been the old house settling. These historic homes have their own music." They all nodded, accepting his explanation with ease. But in the quiet of their minds, each felt the same thought rise gently to the surface: the house was not simply settling, there was something else. Something older. Watching over the place, moving softly through the rooms. Yet, nothing about it felt unkind. If anything, there was a gentle warmth to it. As though the echoes of the past wished only to be remembered, not feared. The plantation workers spoke of similar experiences. While working near the back garden, one woman often felt a soft brushing breeze pass behind her, even on still days. Another claimed he once heard the faint laughter of children drifting near the porch. Though the children were far away at the time, they spoke of these things carefully, in quiet tones, as though they understood something the land already knew: that the Myrtles Plantation held layers of time stacked gently on top of one another. And sometimes, those layers brushed against the present, like pages of an old book fluttering open, still. No one dared to call it haunted. That word is sharp, abrupt, heavy. It did not match the soft, tender presence that lingered in the halls. Instead, the plantation was described as attentive, alive, watchful, a place where history lived just beneath the surface, never fully gone. Evenings became the most mysterious time of day. As the sun dipped below the tree line, warm colors spread across the fields. Shadows stretched long and quiet along the porch boards. And the house seemed to exhale, settling into the deep calm of night. Sometimes, a lantern's flame would dance a little higher. Sometimes, a rocking chair on the porch would move ever so slightly. Sometimes, a whisper of warmth would pass through a room, brushing gently against the skin, like a faint memory drifting by. The family grew used to these moments. They spoke of them softly, almost fondly, and the plantation, in turn, seemed to embrace their presence. But beneath all that calm, a deeper story waited, something tied to a woman who once walked these grounds long before the new family arrived. Her name was spoken only in hushed tones. Her story passed quietly from one generation to the next, and soon her presence would enter the narrative more clearly, gently weaving its way into the life of the Myrtles Plantation. For now, though, the house remains warm, steady, and full of patient whispers. As we leave this part of the story, imagine the warm Louisiana night settling over the porch. Imagine the soft rustle of moss, the glow of a lantern dimming, and the quiet feeling that the house is never truly empty, even in its stillness. It remembers. Over the next few days, Daniel continued his quiet routine, rising with the pale desert sunrise, brewing a simple cup of coffee over a small stove, and taking slow, careful walks around the mouth of the old mine. He spent most of his time listening to the way the wind curled through the broken wooden beams, listening to the soft clicks of shifting stones deep inside the shaft, listening for any hint of the strange presence he felt that first night. At first, he thought he might have imagined everything: the echo, the shadow, even the feeling that someone was standing behind him. Perhaps it was just the mind playing tricks in a lonely place. But on the fourth evening, just as the sky faded into a bluish violet, something changed. He noticed small details he had missed before: old lantern hooks still hanging from splintered timbers, boot prints in the dust that did not match his own, faint, circular patterns carved into the rock near the entrance. They were symbols he didn't recognize, simple lines and curves, almost like markings made by miners long ago, to guide their way through darkness. As he traced one with his fingertips, a cold, still wave seemed to move through the air, not a breeze, not the desert wind, but a sensation, as if the mine itself exhaled. In that quiet moment, Daniel slowly stepped back, not out of fear, but out of respect. Whatever history lived deep in that mine, it felt old, unfinished, and waiting. He realized then that he wasn't simply researching a forgotten tragedy, he was stepping into a story that still lingered, a story that refused to vanish with time. So that night, under the soft glow of a lantern, Daniel made a decision. He would head deeper into the tunnels the next morning, calmly, carefully, and with an open mind, because something in the heart of the Nevada desert seemed ready to reveal itself, one quiet step at a time. The next morning arrived gently, with a pale, warm light stretching across the desert floor. Daniel woke slowly, feeling a mixture of curiosity and quiet determination. The mine waited for him, silent, still, holding its secrets just beneath the surface. He moved calmly as he prepared for the day, a small lantern, a notebook, fresh batteries, and a thin coil of rope, more for comfort than necessity. Everything he carried felt light, unhurried, as if he were preparing, not for danger, but for a walk through someone else's memories. When he reached the entrance, he paused a moment. The mine's wooden beams, aged and cracked, seemed to glow softly in the early sun. Dust drifted lazily in the air, catching the light like tiny floating stars. It was peaceful, almost welcoming. He stepped inside, one gentle footfall at a time. The deeper he moved, the cooler the air became, the world narrowing into a tunnel of soft shadows and faint echoes. His lantern cast a steady glow along the rocky walls, revealing pick marks left by hands long gone, small wooden braces, fragments of old rail tracks, and every so often, one of those strange, circular carvings, guiding him forward. The silence wasn't empty, it felt layered, as if the mine held voices that spoke only in the slight shifting of stone, or the distant drip of water echoing through abandoned shafts. Daniel found himself breathing slowly, matching the quiet rhythm of the space around him. It was easy to imagine the miners who once walked these same paths, men who worked by lantern light, who laughed, struggled, and hoped for a better life, deep beneath the desert. As he rounded a bend, his lantern revealed something unexpected, a small, collapsed support beam, resting at an odd angle, as though someone had tried to brace it recently. He knelt beside it, brushing away dust. It wasn't new, but it wasn't entirely ancient either. It made him wonder, had someone else been inside this mine, not so long ago? A soft, cool breeze drifted past him, though there was no wind this deep underground. It felt almost like a presence moving by, gentle, unseen, as if the mine were acknowledging him. Daniel stood again, calmly lifting the lantern a little higher, ready to continue deeper. He didn't feel alone, but strangely, peacefully accompanied. Whatever waited in the heart of the mine, was drawing him forward, slowly, patiently, step by quiet step. As Daniel moved deeper into the mine, the walls seemed to close in gently, not with pressure, but with quiet intimacy. The air smelled of warm earth, faint minerals, and the faint trace of history carried in every stone. His lantern cast long, soft shadows, each one stretching across the rough walls like a memory frozen in time. The mine seemed to breathe with him, a slow, steady rhythm that mirrored his own calm heartbeat. Every footstep echoed softly, yet not in a way that startled, more like a whisper joining the long chorus of past lives who had walked here long before him. He noticed more carvings etched into the walls, simple marks, sometimes circles or lines, sometimes initials. Each seemed deliberate, patient, and quiet, almost like a diary written into the stone for anyone willing to notice. He ran his fingers lightly across the grooves, imagining the hands that had made them, feeling a connection through centuries of silence. A few feet further, he reached a small chamber where the mine opened slightly wider. Sunlight from a small, dusty opening above spilled faintly into the space, making the dust shimmer like tiny gold particles floating lazily in the air. He paused here, letting his eyes slowly trace the shapes of old wooden supports, broken tools, and scattered stones. It was in this chamber that Daniel first felt a gentle presence, soft, almost like a sigh or a breeze brushing against the back of his neck. Not frightening, not urgent. Simply there, patient, and observant. He realized that the mine itself carried the stories of those who had labored here, their hopes, their quiet conversations, their small victories, and the simple rhythms of their days. As he sat down on a low stone, Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He imagined the miners, long ago, pausing to rest in this very spot, the same warm glow of lanterns illuminating their worn faces, the same steady, calm heartbeat of human life pulsing through the mine. He felt a sense of peace, an understanding that history does not always arrive with drama or violence. Sometimes, it is quiet, gentle, and patient, waiting for someone willing to notice. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. The sense of time had softened here. Daniel finally rose, brushing dust from his clothes. He turned toward the exit slowly, savoring each step, carrying with him a small treasure, the calm understanding that this mine, like many historical places, holds its own heartbeat, and if one listens carefully, it speaks softly in its own time. When he reached the daylight again, the desert stretched before him, warm and golden. The sun was higher now, illuminating the distant ridges and the gentle contours of the land. Daniel took a deep breath, letting the warm air fill his lungs. He looked back at the mine, now quiet and still, and felt a soft gratitude for the connection he had found, an invisible thread that tied the present to the past. Simple and enduring, he walked slowly back toward his camp, allowing the desert wind to brush across his face. Each step was gentle, unhurried, as though carrying the calm energy of the mine itself. And as he settled back into the quiet of the evening, he understood that some places do not reveal all their stories at once. They offer only a gentle invitation, to observe, to listen, and to allow history to unfold in its own patient rhythm. The haunted mines of Nevada, like the quiet land around them, would continue to hold their secrets. And for those willing to walk slowly, to breathe deeply, and to let the calm of history wash over them, these stories offer a rare gift, a connection to the past. Soft and enduring, that lingers long after the final footstep echoes away. Tonight, as the sun sets and shadows grow long across the desert, we leave Daniel near the edge of the mine, carrying with him the gentle, quiet knowledge that some histories are best discovered slowly, patiently, and with an open, calm heart. And so, our story ends here for now, with the desert stretching wide and peaceful before him, the mine quietly resting, and the whispers of the past drifting softly into the evening air, waiting for another listener to hear them. If you are still awake, take a slow, deep breath, feel the gentle rhythm of the night surrounding you, let your body soften and your mind drift, carry the quiet stories of the Myrtles Plantation with you, like a soft breeze through the oak trees. Good night. And sleep peacefully.